in the chat feature just a little message to feel free to go in and introduce yourself in the chat feature. And if there are any just kind of general questions, etc., not so much about the material, but if you are having any tech issues or can't hear me well or can't see what we're featuring on the screen, you can use that chat feature. But any questions that will be directly related to the material, we'll be using the Q&A function, which we'll be talking about shortly. But for now, feel free to use the chat feature, and also let me know if the chat feature is not functioning for you. Sometimes there's a setting that needs to be used, and it seems like yes. All right, thank you for letting me know, Kelly and Kathy. I see that, so I'm going to see what I can do to fix that here. And also, yeah, Rebecca is co-hosting, and Rebecca, if you're also familiar too with enabling the chat feature. Okay, everyone. Yes, it looks like the chat feature is working here. Thank you. And it is officially 11 o'clock, and we do like to start right on the dot and at least start with the general introduction and whatnot. We'll wait for just another moment here, but while we are waiting for a couple of the last few attendees to join, for those of you who just joined, we said to use, if you are having any kind of technical issues or just general introductions, use the chat feature. There is the Q&A feature also, and that will be used during the webinar for the actual materials. And so with that said, it is 11:01, and so that we can get done. This should only last just an hour, so we will open it up to questions throughout, but then also at the very end, and we'll also open it up to any questions as well. But it should easily be done by noon today. So I would like to start out by just saying welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Jonathan Duda. I'm the grants manager here at Parks and Trails New York. And today's webinar is for anyone considering applying for a grant through the New York State Park and Trail Partnership Grant Program. This webinar is for both new and returning applicants. So a little bit of housekeeping here. We do have you all muted. So as I said earlier, you can ask questions through the using the Q&A feature, and we will address those at intervals throughout the webinar. If you do have any technical questions or need to communicate with us or with participants as a whole, please use the chat feature. And yes, a recording of this presentation, as well as these slides and the questions, as well as their answers asked, will be available on our website and by email for you to share with your colleagues and organization. All right, so I am on the call. As I had mentioned, I'm Jonathan Duda, the grants manager, and also on the call co-hosting will be our program manager, Rebecca Murray. And we'll be kind of switching on and off so that you're not hearing my same voice going on and on throughout. So we'll change it up a little bit for you. Keep it interesting. So what is this going to look like today? Today's webinar, we're going to walk through the grant program application process, going into detail on the various topics listed here. We'll periodically stop throughout the presentation to answer your questions in the Q&A sections. All of the questions and their answers posed in these sections during this webinar will be available to you, and as I've mentioned, after the presentation. So most of you are familiar with our organization, but for those of you who are not, Parks and Trails New York was founded to advocate for the New York State Park system. While our mission has expanded to protect our network of trails and other open spaces throughout the state, a central part of our work over the past 30 years is working to strengthen friends groups. So a little background here, the Park and Trail Partnership Grants, it's a competitive matching grants program. So each year we have a limited amount of funds to award through the Environmental Protection Fund. Therefore, not all projects applied for can be awarded. We work together with the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, as well as the Department of Environmental Conservation on the administration and evaluation of this grant program. Since 2015, we have awarded a total of 222 projects totaling $8.1 million. And this year's state budget included a 10th round of funding through the EPF, allocating $2 million to the awards and the administration of the program. So in 2022, the program was raised to $2 million, including increased maximum award amounts for each grant category. We have kept those increased maximum amounts for this round, which we'll detail further on in this webinar. And this expansion, it also did create new focus areas, such as projects intending to increase accessibility in our parks, enhancing diversity, equity, and inclusion within our organizations, and strengthening new and existing partnerships within our communities. This year, we have adjusted the grant schedule to better suit the needs of you, the applicants, and to better align with the calendar year as well. This 10th round includes an expanded application period to account for the busy season for most applicants, with the grant period starting the following January. The underlying goal of the program is to support and enhance state parks, trails, historic sites, and public lands. We do that through this program by strengthening organizations that support these places, which are you, the friends groups. So whatever project that you are considering for your application, it should directly relate back to one or more of these program goals that you see here. Most important, and the very first thing you should do in this process is to ask yourself, is my group even eligible to apply? For starters, is your organization's mission the stewardship of a park, trail, historic site, or public land under the jurisdiction of OPRHP or DEC? Other requirements include that you must be a registered charity in New York State. You must be classified as a tax-exempt 501c3 organization by the IRS. That's unless you are applying for a step-up grant, or if you are operating under the fiscal sponsorship of another 501c3 organization. You must have a current MOA with the New York State Parks. It's a memorandum of agreement, or if you're a DEC affiliate, you must have a memorandum of understanding, use and occupancy agreement, or a volunteer service agreement with the DEC at the time the grant is awarded. If the agreement is not current, you can provide a letter from the state agency stating that an updated version is underway. If you do not have a formal agreement, please contact either Andy Fife or Patrick Yako at OPRHP for more info. And we'll provide that info later on for you. Or actually, it is, I actually thought ahead. I did put it right there under the no agreement. So please reach out to them if you do not have a formal agreement at this time. So unfortunately, though, organizations partnering with municipal or private parks are not eligible. And one last thing, one of the more frequently asked questions that we do receive about eligibility is if you still have an open active project that was funded by a previous Park and Trail Partnership grant, and it is in good standing, you can, of course, still apply for this round. So don't let that deter you from applying. If you do have one open, go right ahead, and you're more than welcome to apply for this round. So what I will do now is I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca, who is going to tell you about the various grant categories for which you can apply.
All right. Thanks, John. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So for those of you that have applied for a PTPG grant in the past, this information I'll talk to will really just be the refresher. And then for anyone new to the grant process, I can talk through the 4 different grant categories. I'll provide a brief list of ineligible costs, and then I can talk about the organizational match component. So this year, we're again offering 4 different types of grants. This workshop, though, will only be focusing on the first 3. The 4th category, the professional development category, is used to hire permanent and sustainable staff. There are 2-year grants that require a letter of intent, but that was due yesterday. So this grant is closed. So we'll focus on the remaining 3: stewardship, public access capacity and organizational effectiveness, and step up. So this first grant, the stewardship and public access capacity grants, are intended to assist with stewardship, interpretation, promotion, education, and public access of a New York State park, trail, historic site, or public land, while also enhancing the organization's visibility and capacity. Groups can apply for the stewardship and public access grants for up to $300,000 this particular round, and we require a 10% match, half of which could be in kind, and we'll go over in kind in just a little while. And then typically we would disperse the first half when the contract is signed, when the agreement is signed, and then the second half would be given when the grant awardee submits their interim report around the 6-month mark. And we've seen some really cool projects come out of this grant category that help Friends with marketing plans, promotion efforts, accessibility or engagement improvements. We've seen interpretive kiosks, exhibits, new signage on trails. We've seen groups use this for outreach and public education and recreation programs. That's usually results in greater public support and broader public involvement. The capacity and organizational effectiveness grants help strengthen the capacity and expertise of the Friends organizations that support New York State's parks, trails, historic sites, or public lands, and aid them in fulfilling their mission to improve their reach, effectiveness, and impact. And groups can apply for a capacity and organizational effectiveness grant up to $200,000 this round. And similar to the last category, require a 10% match, half of which can be in kind, so not cash. Same thing as the last category, we would distribute the first half when the contract is signed, and then the remainder at your 6-month interim report. This specific grant category can help Friends carry out board or staff training and development. You can develop the multi-year strategic plan. You could use it for website and newsletter design and development. It can fund consulting services. We've seen it used to expand diversity, equity, inclusion within the organization. We've seen some really cool board recruitment campaigns. We always need more board members. Diversifying membership, or maybe expanding an existing volunteer program. And among the most popular, but also somewhat confusing for applicants, is the hiring of temporary contractors, staff, or interns to support the organization's capacity building work. So these temporary contractors are not to be confused with the permanent positions that the professional development category would be appropriate. So that grant that is now since closed, but that is for the hiring of permanent staff. This is temporary. John had alluded to the step-up category, in which you do not need to be 501c3. This grant is intended to get you to be 501c3. So it assists Friends organizations with the administrative and legal fees needed to secure 501c3 status, and any costs that come with completing a consultant-facilitated organizational assessment and resulting plan. So these awards are up to $20,000. We require a $500 cash or in-kind match. And then unlike these categories, the step up awards are actually given in their entirety at the signing of the contract. So you can really get up and running. So as John said, the monies would be awarded in January. And so you can really kick off the new year and get going on this process. And then this just an overview, the professional development category period is now closed, but if you're still interested in learning more, maybe for the next round, there's a webinar available that just focuses on the PD category. But just a quick overview, these funds hire permanent staff, full or part-time. They could be a new position or kind of upping an existing position from part-time to full-time. And again, the letters were due yesterday. So anybody that's applying, good luck. We look forward to reviewing. So these grants can definitely cover a lot of different expenses, but of course, with most grants, there's things that these grants cannot cover. So any grant or any expenses before the grant contract is signed cannot be covered. So this is not a reimbursement program. Any regular expense of the organization that appears in your operating budget, no real estate deals, endowments, travel, and certainly not any money used towards lobbying efforts. We have a full list on the Friends Group Gateway at PTNY Friends /grants. The links at the bottom that gives you a full list of ineligible costs. For the organizational match that we talked about for all of the grant categories, this match is the percentage of the total project budget, not the amount of money that you're requesting. We often receive questions about that. So we require documentation of matching funds 30 days after the award announcement. The matching funds can be from various sources. We'll get into the in-kind component in just a few minutes. So organizational staff time spent like carrying out the grant administrative can be counted towards matching funds, but agency staff time cannot. So parks, DEC, that time can't count towards matching funds. And matching funds, importantly, cannot be state grants or state funds. We cannot match state funds with more state funds, unfortunately. So figuring out the organizational match, you can figure out the match by starting with your total budget, calculating 10%, about 10% match from that total budget. You can also start with the total amount that your organization will be able to match, and then use that to calculate the total project budget. So both options are valid. We do have a match calculator on our website, and it's very helpful. So for the capacity and step up, 50% of the match can be in kind, not cash. So if your match is $2,000, that means 1,000 can be in cash, and then another 1,000 can be donated goods or services. Our in-kind match contributions, they can include the donation of professional construction services, legal facilitation, consultation, etc. This can be the donation of travel costs that stem from the individual. Do you have any board members or existing volunteers that can donate their professional services? Do they have a particular expertise? This would have to go above and beyond normal board duties. Goods, including meeting rooms, equipment, printing costs, food or refreshments, construction materials too, can count as match. If you do though get more materials and goods donated than you'd budgeted, you will still be responsible for spending the entire grant amount. We can count unskilled general labor from volunteers, trail work, administrative work, construction work. Of course, keeping track of all of those hours. And the standard rate per hour as of April 2023 is $31.80. So you'd have to adhere to the standard rate per hour if it's time, match time. And then, just always good rule of thumb is the time must be quantifiable and well documented. So always keep good records.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Rebecca. We'll pause here for just a moment. And if you do have any questions, type them into the Q&A feature there. And while we're waiting for just a moment, I'll just kind of reiterate too. I feel the budget is probably one of the more difficult parts for many groups. And so yeah, especially figuring if you do have other sources, if you do have, let's say, state or DEC is going to be chipping in X amount, how does that figure into your project? Because it's not, that state funds, but it's total, part of the total project budget, et cetera. So it can get a little confusing with instances such as that. So feel free, please reach out to me, send me your budgets to take a look over and to make sure, because that is an aspect that our reviewers really do scrutinize. Budgets are one of the most important pieces of documentation in there. So yeah, feel free to shoot it at me if you have any questions, concerns. But we'll continue on here, and if you do have questions, just throw them into that Q&A section. What I will do here is I'm going to continue on with talking about the application process. Oh, I'm sorry, I do see one here. One question just came in through the chat, and that's, are there geographical priority areas for the stewardship grant? Not so much priorities. We geographically, though, we do, when we do our make our decisions, we do like to try to get as many regions geographically in New York State represented as possible. So that does kind of come into some of our decision making. Granted, some of the regions have many more friends groups than some of the others do, but we do like to try to get as many regions represented. And so there are no limits on any regions, no monetary limits for categories or anything, but we do like to try to at least have representation throughout the state. And let's see, another question did just come in. Are stewardship funds able to be used for building trails, or do they need to be related to outreach, like building a kiosk? No, the stewardship funds are actually those, kind of what we call shovel in the ground type projects, those actual physical projects for the building. Yeah, whether it is restoration of a trail or building a new one. Just be sure that those trails, oftentimes some of these trails might wander off state lands onto private property or maybe municipal lands. So if that's the case, make sure that in your application that you're only identifying that one section of trail that would be built that would remain on state land. So any trail restoration work, any trail building on municipal or private lands cannot be funded. Okay, wonderful. I will continue on here. As I had mentioned, I will talk about the application process. You can access the grant application in the grant portal, which is accessible on the Friends Gateway, located at ptnyfriends.org/grants. It is still also accessible by clicking the Grant Portal tab at the top of Parks and Trails New York's main website, if that's how you're used to getting there. So that link will still be available. The Apply page. There are many resources on how you use the Grant Portal system, which can all be found on this Apply page. It's one of the subpages that's accessible by hovering over the Park and Trail Partnership Grants menu item there on the website. As you can see, there are other pages accessible here, including eligibility requirements, detailed descriptions of the grant categories, frequently asked questions, and additional resources which we'll cover later in this webinar. Okay, so for the register and the login, has your group applied before? If this is your first time, simply just click on that Create New Account button. If your organization has applied before, then don't create a new one. You can log on with your existing account info, or if you're new to the organization, don't have those records, just contact us for assistance, and we can set you up with a new user profile under your already existing organization in the system. Step 3 is the information here for the organization. It includes the organization name, employee identification number of the organization, your email, the mailing address. You'll fill it out first for the organization, then for you individually, and then possibly for the executive director, unless you are the executive officer, in which case your information will be automatically included as that. Note if you're using a fiscal agent, you'll need their employee identification number as well. This applicant dashboard can be found in the top left corner. This is essentially your home page. If you've applied before, or all former applications will be available from this dashboard under the active requests or in the historical requests tab. To begin with this application, you'd simply just click on the apply button. Here you will select the grant type that you're applying for, and you'll click the corresponding apply button. Take note, over on the left-hand side there is a Send to Grant Hub button. You do not need to have Grant Hub in order to apply for this grant. If you do have it, that's fine, but that is not a requirement for this grant. So if you're not familiar with it, don't even worry about it. One very useful tool in the application software is that you can print the application in full as a PDF. Once you open the application, the question list button to print will be in the top right corner of your screen. It will turn the questions into a PDF that is easily printable. If you do want to print your applications with the answers you have already begun working on, you will click on Application Packet, and that will print a PDF of the questions and answers that you've already entered into the system. So once you start working on the application, you'll notice this Application Packet button will appear there, and that will download everything for you all at once. All right, a few technical tips. You can save your work and continue with your application over time, so feel free to come back to it as many times as needed. It's very important to click the Submit Application button when all is completed. Otherwise, we'll assume that you have decided to abandon the process. There are also more tips and many more instructions on our website. We're now going to go through the main sections of the application. The applications for each category have slight differences, but essentially they contain all of these 5 same sections that you see here. The first is eligibility. As we mentioned before, here you'll be asked to confirm that you meet the eligibility criteria that we overviewed, including your mission, proof of nonprofit status, your formal agreement with the state agency. As mentioned earlier, if your formal agreement has just expired or will expire soon, you'll need to provide a letter from the park or site manager, or even the regional director if your group manages the site, stating that a new agreement is in progress and is expected to be signed. If you've never had a formal agreement with OPRHP or DEC, that does not preclude you from applying. You'll just need this letter from the agency stating that one in progress, and you'll see there right on the application, you can just upload that letter right there in place of the agreement. So here for the general project info, you'll provide a descriptive, unique name for your project to distinguish it from other proposals. You'll also include an amount for the project as a whole, as well as the amount that you'll be requesting to be funded. This is also where you'll be required to provide the amount of the organizational match, at least 10% of the total project budget for the capacity and for the stewardship grants. Or for the step-up grants, it will just be a $500 cash match. For general organizational info, you'll provide standard information on your organization, such as describing your organization's history and experience. This is your opportunity to tell us where your organization has been, where you are now, and where you're going. Questions vary according to grant category. For example, if we don't expect an organization applying for a step-up grant to provide the same info as a more established applicant, obviously. In the proposal section, there's a mix of narratives and file attachments. The narrative is where we learn about the project for which you are seeking funding. You're going to describe the project, What do you ultimately wish to achieve with it? Why do you need this funding at this time? Please be sure to respond to each part of the questions. And of course, yes, be specific as possible, but not too specific because as you notice, there is a character limit for each section there. So specific yet concise. In the proposal narrative, some of the other questions you'll be answering throughout the narrative include capacity building. How will this project initiate, grow, strengthen, or transform your organization and enable your organization to better achieve its mission? Regarding results and evaluation, what quantifiable changes do you expect to result from this project? How will you measure those changes and evaluate project success? We're looking for specific ways in which you will measure success. Regarding community connections and partnerships, who will you work with to undertake your project? Briefly describe the role of these partnerships and the level of support for the project with park or trail management and within the surrounding community. Your organizational commitment, how will your board and volunteers be involved in the project? Sustainability is very important also. How will you keep the project going, or what results will it yield after the funding runs out? And regarding the audience, how will this project engage a wide demographic and welcome communities and individuals from different backgrounds and abilities? How will it enhance and promote diversity, equity, and inclusion? This may be challenging for some proposals, so we have included a link in the application containing a list of resources to help guide you through incorporating some of these themes into your project. So yeah, we encourage you to check that list, and it can be very useful for you. The project budget and the documentation of matching funds. Here we're looking for a detailed, itemized budget for your proposal, including both income and expenses. This helps show us that you've really thought through what is needed to undertake the project and how you're going to secure the resources to do it. This budget, it must include information on the expected sources of the organization's match, the status of these funds. For example, are they pledged? Are they in hand? Are they yet to be raised? We really encourage organizations to use this as an opportunity to leverage other sources of funding. But if you do intend to use operating funds or reserve funds as part of your all cash match, as part or all of the cash match, you'll need to just submit as part of the application a board approved statement indicating that these specific funds are available and will be dedicated for the required match. And remember that the total match must be in hand before we can disperse the first half of the grant award. And this is just a little sample of a template budget worksheet that serves two purposes. It's the template you should use and submit to us. So please download this form from our website. It also provides an example of how, how it might be filled out. Keep in mind that what you see here, these are just suggested items, and that in the template too, there are suggested items in there. So if you plan to use this template, they should be updated accordingly to fit your proposal. So don't hesitate to clear any of the rows or columns out. And make sure that your match is correct. At least 10% and 50% of that 10% can be in kind. And yeah, as Rebecca had mentioned earlier, feel free to use that match calculator tool that we have on our website. It's a very, very handy little tool when you're calculating these things out. All right, going to pause here. I see in the Q&A there are a couple of questions. Let's see. Pauline asked, the DEC has some stone and gravel stockpiles that will be used for trail drainage and tread improvements. Can the value of the stockpiles be used as part of meeting the match? Would it be in kind or monetary? Okay, yeah, that's a mighty good question because, that is state-owned property in a sense. And as we mentioned, state funds can't match state funds. That is something I would actually have to look into. I'm kind of leaning towards no, that's kind of getting into a gray area of state because it is, for example, DEC staff, their time could not be applied towards, if they were going to be helping to build the trail, their time certainly could not be applied for as applied towards the match, because that is kind of state funds. It can, however, that may be able to be incorporated into the budget as part of an expense, but Pauline, yeah, I'll have to work with you on that, because yeah, that is kind of a tricky area, in which I'm kind of leaning towards no, just because it is state property and state funds and cannot be used towards the match. Okay, any other questions here while we're paused? If not, you can still, of course, that Q&A section is going to be open, and just as questions pop up, throw them in there, and at our next interval, we will address them. So what I will do now is I will turn it over to Rebecca, who is going to talk a little bit about the proposal narrative and really get into the details of the application.
All right. So I can offer a few other things to include within your application, and then I can talk through some of the supporting documentation that we require. If you are requesting funding for services or material goods that will cost $5,000 or more, you'll need to provide 2 estimates for each service or material. So this will help substantiate the grant request, and it helps you get the best bang for your buck. When you're uploading documents through the portal, you'll have to combine them all into one PDF. So this does require Adobe. I know John has kindly offered, but if you don't have that service, to reach out to us, we'd be happy to combine files for you. Within the narrative, you should describe the security of your matching funds, and if they're in hand, or how you plan to secure them. We always encourage applicants to demonstrate their need. So convince us within your proposal narrative that you need the funding from PTPG to undertake the project. So this is definitely an important question. So make sure that need is incredibly clear. We also will be asking about publicity. So from the initiation of the project and the grant award, as well as the project completion and results, we ask that you be as specific as possible about the activities and communication channels that you're going to be used to publicize your funding, your award, your project, etc. The project timeline is certainly critical. So within your narrative, we're looking for a realistic and detailed timeline for the project's implementation. We would expect a brief description of the specific tasks, who is lead person on the task, and what is the anticipated time frame for each task, how long it's going to take. So this particular question is important because it helps us know that you've thought through all the details and exactly what it's going to take to complete the project. For the key personnel, we need the names and titles of all the individuals who will oversee the project and have any sort of responsibility for reporting on grant performance. We highly suggest that all applicants take a moment to review the evaluation criteria, which can be found on our website, and we'll go over a little bit later on. In addition to answering questions and supplying documents related to your specific request, we also require that organizations in all grant categories provide organizational documentation. This includes a list of your current staff. You're able to attach a document, so if you have a PDF or type out the names. We will require an operating budget. This operating budget should not include capital costs. We will require a recent financial statement and your most recent annual report if you have an annual report. We also require a letter of support from State Parks or DEC. So we need that uploaded at least 30 days prior to the application deadline. We definitely encourage you to start talking about your projects early and obtain approval as soon as possible. So this will help expedite your application process and get it rolling. You can include your current strategic plan. We also require the nonprofit environmental review form and most recent financial report to the New York State Charities Bureau, which we'll touch on in just a second. And then there's the optional suggestions, including additional letters of support or photos. For your most recent financial statement, we would expect at least 2 documents. We have templates for both if you need them on the Gateway website under the Resources for Applicants page. An income statement shows your total revenues and expenses for the last most recent fiscal year, and the balance sheet. This shows your total assets and liabilities for the year. So these templates are available. If you have audited or reviewed financials, you can certainly attach those, but we understand that not every organization will have audited financials or anything prepared by a CPA. So we'd still expect to see this information in a form that's appropriate to the scale or ability of your organization. And if you are operating through a fiscal sponsor, you will need to provide not just your financial statements, but those of your fiscal sponsor as well. This is a sample income statement, so don't necessarily worry. John said this earlier about kind of the details here and what you see in terms of the expenses, because every organization is going to be different. But the point of this income statement, the sample, is just to show a breakdown of where your income came from and what you spend your money on, and then the totals for each. Same thing with the balance sheet. Every organization will be different, but we do want to see what assets and liabilities your organization has. The income statement only shows us the income for the last fiscal year, so this will give us effectively a better picture of your organization's financial position. In a true balance sheet, the assets and liabilities will match, but only obviously if you have cash and no liabilities. So that's okay. For the New York State Charities Bureau, all organizations in New York State are required to register with the New York State Attorney General's Charities Bureau and fill out an annual report. So all applicants must submit their most recently filed report, the CHAR 500. Newly registered applicants who have yet to submit an annual report will attach a copy of your registration form, so that's the CHAR 410. And if you have been remiss in registering or filing, you can certainly include that within the application. So don't let that deter you from submitting. A link to the non-for-profit environmental review form is available directly on the application form, and it's also on our Gateway FAQ section. All applicants must complete it as required by New York State Parks. And applicants that do not include construction projects simply check the last box in Part B. The project involves administrative components. Projects that do involve construction would check off the applicable box. So for construction or rehab, just some examples for clarity. It can be building rehabilitation, any change to a historic structure, adding or removing anything, painting, remodeling, reconstructing, any sort of improvements made to interpretive kiosks, exhibits, signage, or new trails with sign or trail maintenance work, costs that are part of a larger construction project or any shovel in the ground projects, and essentially anything that requires engineering plans or State Historic Preservation Office, the SHPO review. This piece is only for the stewardship and public access grants. Projects which include construction or rehab, the application must include the signed environmental review form, which again is on the Resources for Applicants page on the Gateway. The State Historic Preservation Office review checklist provided by New York State Parks will require a map with the location of the project identified, and a site plan which depicts the location and elements of the project clearly. Successful grant applicants that involve construction and require additional review will be notified by PTNY. We will reach out to you directly, but definitely make sure you discuss with the particular site or public land manager very early on if it will involve construction or rehab. I know that was probably a lot, so we'll take another pause for questions.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Rebecca. Yeah, feel free to use the Q&A feature there. I do see there are a couple of questions in there. One is from Jolene. It asks, is this just related to the Friends group, or is it the information from the state park that we partner with? I'm not sure, Jolene, if you were referring to something in specific, one of the slides there. If you could either in the chat or Q&A specify a little bit more. Oh, that was part of the income for the Friends. Yes, this is all, yeah, this is all the income of the Friends group, all the financial documents of the Friends group, and yeah, not of the actual park itself. You're welcome. And a reminder of what is the deadline for round 10? Well, that is very appropriately asked because the next slide here shows just that information. Wednesday, August 28th is actually the next is the deadline for submitting. So as again, if I can please reiterate that, I know it's blurry down there, the little picture, but just be sure when you are done, when you're all set and ready to submit your application. And by clicking that button, we do have a lot of applicants who kind of fill things out and they decide that they just they abandon the application and they decide they don't want to. So we'll just assume you're one of those if you don't click that submit application, even though there are some things filled out on there. And yep, 11:59 p.m. Wednesday, August 28th. So please don't wait until 11:59. Try to do it by 11 p.m. if you can. But no, we highly suggest start now. This is we gave a very generous application period this round, as mentioned earlier, because it is the busy season for a lot of you. So start getting those letters of support from your park manager and getting your budget together and everything and filling it out now, because you just never know, things can pop up at the last minute. So read through the evaluation criteria on our website. There's a whole document on there that that you can use, which will help you with your application questions and help you better understand what our reviewers are looking for. You can find that criteria document under the resources for applicants page on the Gateway website. So yeah, I suggest become very familiar with those, just what kinds of things we're looking at before you start kind of writing your narrative out. It will really help you kind of form and really help you strengthen your application. All right, start planning now. As I mentioned before, being that the application period now coincides with your busy season, be sure to speak with your park manager now to confirm their support and get that letter onto your application. You'll see where on the application where you can upload that. Download the application form ahead of time to familiarize yourself with the required information. Review the evaluation criteria, as I mentioned. Some questions may have multiple parts, so be sure to include all of those answers within your narrative. And yeah, you can save your work each time you wish and just go back to it. Make note too that there are file uploads. These files do have a size limit, 1 to 2 megabytes per question. If you have more than one document to attach to a question, you must combine all of the documents into one file. You can use Adobe Acrobat or other software. If you do have trouble combining documents, or if documents exceed the limit, feel free to just reach out to us. We can help. We have the tools here to really size the documents, size them down, make them fit into the form better. And you can email supplemental materials such as photos, letters of support, etc. You can email them all to grants@ptny.org. Those will come right to me. Be sure to be specific anytime you do send supplemental material so that we know who they're coming from. And of course, again, don't forget to click Submit Application. Additional resources can be found on the web pages, as we mentioned, as well as the frequently asked questions page. There are some templates and helpful tools that can be found under the resources for applicants on our website. Items such as what you see listed here can be found, as well as I mentioned, the evaluation criteria. There's the grant deliverables that are to be expected, some template project budgets. They're mostly Excel spreadsheets for use when completing final reports. That match calculator tool we've been mentioning. There is a sample, if you're going to work with a fiscal agent, there's a sample memorandum of understanding you can use with that fiscal agent. There's a sample work plan. There's also a sample job description outline on there as well. All right. What do we do next from here? Determine and confirm that you are eligible. Foremost important. Worst thing is to fill out the whole application, then find out that you're not eligible. So if you are eligible, please create the login or sign into your already existing profile. You can start the application on there immediately. It is open and ready to go. Check your organization's formal agreement, whether it's an MOU, MOA, or VSA, to be sure that it hasn't expired. That's a volunteer service agreement with the DEC. And yeah, just to be sure that it hasn't expired or that it will be expiring soon. And as we've been mentioning, please speak with your site manager now and get that letter of support. We really prefer that you do get it 30 days prior to the application deadline, so that you're not throwing off your partners at the agency there with a project at the last moment before the application is going to be submitted. So speak with them now. Also, yeah, make sure that you identify and you secure your matching funds. And of course, yeah, we're here for you. Contact us with any questions that you have. I'm always willing to hear your project ideas and see what, especially if you're juggling a couple of ideas, which may be a stronger one at this time. And yep, submit that full application by Wednesday, August 28th. And just to give you a little idea of, here's the process. After you submit the application, that public announcement usually comes from the governor's office about early January or so. And let's see, should you be awarded, you'll sign an agreement and submit some additional documentation, after which you'll receive your first installment. Which the check will be 50% of the total award at that time. And then 6 months later, you'll receive an email to sign into the grant portal to fill out the interim report, after which you'll receive the second and final installment. Let's see, final reports will be due in 12 months. And that's 12 months after that first check had been received, of course. And so if you wish to review this presentation again, we will have, the slides will be available to anyone who is interested, and these questions and their answers will also be on there as well. I see that there are a couple more questions. Let me just see. Deadline for around 10. Let's see. Can the grant funds be used to cover nonprofit staff time? Yes, staff time for administration of the grant only is can be put into your project budget. That is appropriate for that. Yes. And let's see, I think there's one in the chat here. Geographic. Excellent. Some thank yous. Okay. Let me see. I think all questions have been answered. If you do have any others, again, I mentioned that's what we're here for. That's part of a big chunk of my job, is to really make sure your proposal is as strong as possible and to talk you through any potential hurdles you might be having, or things that you might think might weaken the application. Feel free to reach out to me and I'll be happy to talk you through and discuss with them. And yeah, I guess what I'll do is I'll stop sharing my screen and I will say, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. You have 9 minutes left here to enjoy. Good luck with your applications. And again, start now. I can't stress that enough for people to not wait till the last moment. We do actually say that, and just from our experiences with our 10th round, that we have noticed in the past there is a quality of applications that seem like they were kind of thrown in there at the last minute. So we highly stress to kind of take your time and fill it out and make sure everything is complete. And yeah, again, reach out and have a wonderful day. And I look forward to seeing your applications. All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.